All right, and here's another story time. This will be the last one for the night. All right. So this is the story of Gojo Satoru or Satoru Gojo. See, Gojo was one of the people who was born into a clan, one of the noble clans in JJK. See, there's three. There's the Kamo clan that is known for their blood manipulation arts, that curse technique. There's the Zenin clan who's known for the Ten Shadows technique and all that extra stuff over there. And then there's the Gojo clan. They have a limitless user or six eyes user born. But this boy was special. He was born with both abilities. And he when he was born, all the like cursed spirits in Japan like got stronger. They had to adapt basically. Because of this guy. They were like, now this boy's running around and shit, he can see us. He knows we're there and he can kill us like real quick. Um, because this boy understands jujutsu like just by seeing it with his six eyes and stuff, and he knows how strong and where to hit me and all kind of shit. He knows the flow of cursed energy very well, and then he also, he got treatment from his parents and other things. Everybody was like, this is a kid that's gonna like change the fucking world basically. And he grew up a little bit, and then he started going to school at Jujutsu Tech. See, his teacher was Yaga, and his classmates were Shoko and a guy named a boy named Suguru Gato. And they were best friends. They like to run around and play games together. And Shoko was along for the ride too, but Shoko was a little bit weaker than them, and um she wasn't given the special grade status that they were. Um, she that were too powerful. Her and not just her, but other girls too, called Utahime, and Mei Mei. They were trying to go and find some cursed spirit somewhere, and then they needed help. And Gojo and Gato found them and said, we're here to help you out. You bitches are weak. And then Gojo then went, and he was like, okay, why are we, as jutsu sorcerers, supposed to protect these weak people? They should try to get strong themselves, don't you think? And Gecto's like, well, as jujutsu sorcerers, we have to do this. If we don't, who else is going to protect these people? Shit could go, south real quick. And Gojo's like, it just, sucks sometimes. But, they had a job, though, a real job. See, they had to protect the star plasma vessel, Riko Amanai. It's some younger girl who's in middle school. And they were like, okay, we'll have to find that girl and keep her safe. And they were like, yes, because, and Yaga explained, he said, he needs to merge with Tengen to create stability for the walls of Jujutsu Tech, but not just Jujutsu Tech, but all of Japan, to keep like certain cursed spirits at bay and other things, so they don't get stronger and all kind of shit. Tengen's an entity that sits down and basically emits, energy that keeps shit at bay, like fucked up shit, cursed spirits, to a degree, not completely, but can keep them at bay. I you saying that that means keep shit off. Oh yeah, but then Gojo, they find Rico and she's getting hunted down by the Cube group. They like to fuck around and just play games. They ended up like Gojo was like getting hunted by one of the guys hunted, but he wasn't hunted. Um, See, this guy knew how to throw knives and shit, or he thought he did, because then Gojo was like, "Oh well, I have limitless, and anything that tries to get touched, tries to touch me, can't touch me unless I allow it to." So, you lose. And he lost. Yes, that guy lost. And then they had to go fight against these guys who were fucking around in um, the school, right? So they're fucking around in the school where she like goes to school. These are mercenaries that are hired by people to, because they were like, hey, this is Rico. I don't know, we want to, get some money real quick for that girl's head and stuff. Um, and while all this was going on, another man was like on the fucking move for her too. His name was Toji Zenin. See, he comes into the story a little bit later. Um, and Gojo then he handles this guy with he has a paper bag on his head. See, he's able to create clones. But remember, I told you Gojo has six eyes and limitless, so he's able to see the guy's energy and find the real one. He's like, that bitch is hiding over there. Let me run up on him and give him a fucking what for. And he was gonna play games with Red, but then he was like, oh man, I won't do that. I'll just kick his ass with Wing Chun technique. I'm cool. After he had them beat, she, was with them for a while. He was like, let's run around Japan and, go to the beach and go here and go there. People will like try to hunt us and other things, but I have six eyes on at all times. I can like find these people who are trying to hunt our dicks and other things. Well, really to hunt her down. And he's like, all right. And he's like, yo, you're spamming your like curse technique, on time. Gato was like, you gonna be all right? And he's like, yeah. So the day came for the merger and shit, and he was like, okay, it's time for the merger with Rico Avenai and Tengen. So that he was like, take her down there and other things, because Toji was on their ass then, or on his ass, and Toji stabbed Gojo in the chest, and he was like, oh shit, but he was like, it's all right, I'm working on this, and it'll be all right. That didn't affect me as much as you think. And then he, started fighting with Toji. Toji is a guy who doesn't have curse techniques or anything. He has a lot of, brute strength. He's like, man, he's an animal. That's why as Toji Zenin. I equate myself to kind of like Toji Zenin a little bit too. He has his senses like they ain't dull. They're like on like he can track shit like a real hunter. And he was hunting this boy, and he was like, this guy is not what people think he is. Um, and Gojo was a teenager at this point, so he was like, okay, I'll spam blue when he sends these like things out at me. I'll shoot him with blue, and then he sent these like flatheads at him, and then he was like, oh shit, he might try to like use this opportunity to go after the girl. I have to make sure I find her, or find him before he finds her. And then he was like, nope, I'm behind you. And he, stabbed him in the head and got his, he fucked his chest up, stabbed him in the face, cut his throat and all kind of stuff. He was all fucked up. He was like basically almost dead. So then Gojo was, deemed dead on Toji's end. Um, but then, a couple of days pass and, Toji, cashes in on his reward because he did end up killing Rico Amanai and giving the body to the Star Plasma Vessel Association, and he got his cut. He's like, cool, okay, fine. We'll walk and, well, I'll walk and I'll go get something to eat with my money that I got. But as he was doing this, Gojo was standing there and he was like, hey, guess what? Guess what, man? I'm still here. You thought you put me in the ground, but you didn't chop my head off. So that was actually your mistake. And he was like, oh, what? This boy's fucking around playing games with me. What the fuck's going on? This boy fucks around too much. He's like, I don't like that. I'll kill you this time. But Gojo's like, no, this time you're dead. And, he almost read and, Toji was like, this guy's up there, like, in a daze. He's fucking around, like, on some, like, weed or something. Like, he's like, is this boy? And he was like, Gojo was just, like, feeling everything. He's like, it's so, like, surreal. It's so, this is great. I feel like he felt more powerful. He was on a essentially a power high, and he was like, yes, this is this is what I need to do. Uh, amongst all of us, I alone am the honored one. some shit like that he said, and that really pissed Toji off, and he was like, you know what, I don't give a fuck, I'm killing you. But then Gojo lets out his first hollow purple on him. He combines red and blue for that attack, and it rips him to like pieces, basically. He has a whole big ass hole in the side of him, and he's like, you know what, Toji's like, you know what, take care of my son at least. I wasn't the best father and other things, but he's somewhere. Make sure he's alright or whatever. And he was like, okay, yeah. And then he found Megumi, and he was like, hey, guess what? Your parents might not be around, but I can, take care of you and teach you jujutsu and other things. But then, tragedy struck again, though, for Gojo a little bit, or tragedy struck. See, Gato was going through some things. Um, he saw Rico Amanai die. He wasn't strong enough to take on Toji. He kept doing, jujutsu sorcery work. It started to like really wane on him, and he was like, "Well, why the fuck are we doing this? I keep eating cursed spirits because my cursed ability allows me to, but like I'm doing this, and other people ain't sensing our pain or anything. Like even one of the guys who liked me, who looked up to me, he's dead. And people are fucking dying. I don't like these non-jujutsu sorcerers." And he talked to like um Yuki Tsukumo, and she was like, there is a way to like, make sure, cursed spirits don't come back. That's to kill every single, and she was just saying the idea because she essentially knew how it worked. See, she knew that what he knew, and they knew that cursed spirits are formed from people's fear of things, and the fear of that thing manifests a curse that is like that. So basically, your fear of volcanoes, your fear of the dark, there's a cursed spirit that is actually like that. That is the dark, that is that. And they are manifested from that. And these people who don't see, like, and they do it, and the Jujutsu sorcerers see this and attack that. And that's their job to do that, to keep those evil things at bay. But, like, he's like, they don't know what we go through as them. That plan that you said actually sounds right, where you eliminate all the non-jujutsu sorcerers, and then basically there's no more curses because nobody's fearing anything anymore. We've gotten rid of the root of the problem, which is people who fear things. They're weak. These are monkeys who are weak. We have to like eliminate all of them, and anybody who would try to stand up and like defend them too. So then Gato killed his parents and other things, and then Gojo confronts him like, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing? You wanted to protect people at some point, but now you're like doing this shit." And he's like, "Well, my life took a turn and other things. I want to basically rid the world of cursed spirits, but in a different way. See, if I was you, Gojo," and he told Gojo this, he said, "I could actually make my dreams come possible because I am the strongest sorcerer, or that's what you claim you are. You're able to, do all this shit without anybody, like, they can't stop you." And then Gojo was like, "Well, that might be true, but I can't do that. With great power comes great responsibility, essentially." And he was like, "You know what? I won't kill you. I could kill you right now, but I won't because you were my friend, and I'd like to see you change or something." So they let him go. But then years later, and it passed, and he finds these kids. Gojo is more refined in his skills and stuff as like a 6 eyes technique user and limitless user. He's a sensei now at school. He has 3 students here. See, these students are called Panda, who's a cursed, a cursed doll created by Yaga. Then he has another student called Maki Zenin. See, she doesn't have any cursed energy. She's much like Toji Zenin or Toji Fushiguro. And she uses cursed tools to help her fight against shit. And she has physical powers too. And then Maki, who's a boy who can't speak, but he can speak in um, sushi ingredients and stuff. He's like, cool, all right, these are my students, but I have another student too. See, this student is called Yuta Kotu. They have an ancestor that's in common. And also, this boy named Yuta is also a special grade sorcerer, like Gojo. And he's like, I get to like teach you some things. You know, you want to know about the curse that you have and other stuff, you'll learn by becoming a Jujutsu sorcerer at Jujutsu Tech. And then, Gojo was there and he was helping Yuta and his students. And then Gato shows up again and he's like, oh, so you want to attack people, like now, you know? Because, see, Gato was like gathering other cursed users. See, these people weren't working with Jujutsu Sorcery Society, not Jujutsu Tech or, any of these people. These are curse users. See, they have curse techniques, but they use them for fucked up, purposes. They like to like fuck with like regular people and other things. And he grabbed a group of people and he was like, I want to recruit you. He's cool. He's a Jujutsu sorcerer, and I like Jujutsu sorcerer. And anybody else who would like to help me like take on these monkeys and kill them all. And they're like, no, we are gonna not do that because you're weak. We can't do that. And he's like, oh man, well, I'll leave. And then Gojo was like, we have to stop him. He started the night brigade of 100 demons that night, and he had a guy named Miguel on his side. See, Miguel is from he's from South America and shit, and he has a whip that is endowed with certain powers and shit, endowed with conduits and other things, like all kind of extra stuff, all kind of curses and shit. And Gojo was fighting against this guy, and Wing Chun technique, and he was really like working him, and taking on the cursed spirits that were around Tokyo or Kyoto. I don't know where they were at, but he was fighting there, and then he was like, I'll teleport Panda, Inumaki, and Maki to the campus because that's where Yuta was at. And Gato was after Yuta because Yuta has Rika. And that was, Yuta's friend that manifested as a curse and other things. It gave him his power and shit, basically. It manifested as a part of his power because he basically his loss for his friend, made her stay around in a cursed spirit form. So she was manifested as a cursed spirit, and she's able to like do shit for him and keep him protected and other things. But Gato wanted that because she is considered a special great curse, and he observes curses. That's how his curse technique works. And he was like going there to get it, and that happened. But Gojo was there after Yuta did what he could, and he was like, I have to kill you now. You did what you tried to do. You were trying to do this and that. But any last words? And he was like, I never hated, in Gato said, I never hated any Jujutsu sorcerers, not even until the end. But I always hated those monkeys. And then he Gojo killed him. And then a year later happened, and Gojo finds Yuji, but Yuji is possessed by a guy named Sukuna. See, Sukuna is a real threat. He's known as the king of curses and shit. So he manifested forward. Megumi, his other student that he has now, um, was getting his ass whooped. So then he was like, okay, I'll take pictures and stuff to show the other students, just fucking with them a little bit. Then he was like, okay, let me make work of this guy right here called Sukuna. And Sukuna was like, I don't think so. And, Sukuna didn't quite know what Gojo had in store, because he just manifested into modern day. And he was like, okay, well, this guy has these curse techniques and other things. Now I'm only at 5% of my power and stuff. And Gojo was like, fighting against him. And then Yuji was able to suppress him. And he was like, oh, cool. Now Yuji is, somebody who can help us out with collecting the cursed fingers and stuff. So he told the higher ups that they could, use Yuji as that. Collect the fingers of Sukuna, have him eat them, and then kill Yuji, and then essentially kill Sukuna in the same at the same time. And that's what they were gonna do, or they would kill Yuji there and figure out the finger thing for themselves, collect the fingers and do other things with them. But they could never destroy the fingers. Like Gojo even tried to shoot some cursed energy at it, and it didn't do anything. Um, and he was like, you're gonna consume these fingers, and that's how it's gonna be. And then Gojo was like, there for Yuji, and he was like, yeah, you can go inside that building and fight against that cursed spirit, and I'll be out here with Megumi and you guys, him and Nobara, And see, that's the thing about Gojo. He's a special great sorcerer, right? So he's there for his students, but he's also not there for his students. He comes to like gas them up, or not even gas them up, but like keep their spirits high and shit. He's like, because when they come around, they're like, they know what their sensei can do, so they're like, oh, that's our sensei, that's Gojo. Um, he does all kind of stuff. He makes sure shit's safe for everybody. When he's around, I know that I'll be protected and shit, even if like we're in a situation, because he's a special grade sorcerer and he's the strongest one. But Gojo's not always there, so Yuji ended up dying. And then he was like, "Oh damn, one of my students that I had high hopes for died." But then he came back and he was like, "Well, did Sukuna give any like rules for you?" And he was like, "Nah, not that I remember." But then he was like, "Okay, you can train with, or actually, you come with me, or not yet." See, Gojo went out for a stroll, basically, with Ikachi, the guy who like drives a car. He's their little, um, butler and shit. And he's like, "Stop the car." And then he's like, "Okay." And he's like, "Are you gonna hit me?" And he's like, "No, I ain't a douchebag like that. I ain't an asshole. Like, calm down. I just want to walk." And he's like, "Okay, drive away." And then Jogo pops out of the woods. See, Jogo is a special grade curse that was born from people's fear of Mount Fuji. He was powerful, but not enough for Gojo. Um, like, he wasn't enough. He hit him with all kinds of like firepower, and Gojo was like, "Oh, well, guess what? Um, that shit don't work on me. Come try to touch me." And he was like, "Okay, let me see what this is about." Gojo was like, "Hey, guess what? I have a barrier up called Limitless. So the closer you try to get to me, you can't touch me. But I feel like letting you in. Let's touch each other." And he's like, "What? Now I can touch you. Like, what the fuck's going on?" And then he started like beating up Jogo, throwing him around like he's like some toy and shit. And then he got pissed and he was like, well, he flashed away to get Yuji, and he was like, "Yuji, come with me. Let me show you the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery." So he was like, "All right." He grabbed his student and had him sit down. He's like, "Watch this." And Jogo opened up his domain, um, Curse of the Iron Mountain or something like that, and a whole bunch of a volcano appeared. And he's like, "Oh shit!" Yuji's like, "We're gonna die." But then Gojo opened up his domain expansion called Unlimited Void, and it basically flooded Jogo's mind with a whole bunch of information at once. Like basically all the information you can have, but his brain can't process all that. So he's like, "I don't know. I'm just stuck." I don't know what the fuck is going on. This is too much. And he was like, he took the advantage of it and he ripped his head off. Then he was like, "I'll exercise you right here and now." But then another thing happened. He got thrown off guard a little bit, just for a second, as Hanami showed up and grabbed his head. And then Gojo was like, "Damn, he got away with that guy's head. I was going to kill him, but, oh well, next time, you know, there won't be a next time," type. And then Gojo put Yuji on to Nanami. See, Nanami has similar or had similar traits as Yuji, is what Gojo saw. Black Flash, and he was like, "This guy knows Black Flash." And he was like, "I'll leave you in Nanami's hands," and that's what he did. Then, after that happened, um, Jujutsu High was attacked by the cursed spirits of Hanami and some other people who were working for Kenjaku. See, Kenjaku's a guy that stole Suguru Geito's body and was playing games um, to try to bring Sukuna back. And not just that, but to also seal Gojo away. Um, and that's why Jogo or seal Gojo away. And then Jogo went after Gojo initially to see just how powerful he was, because he didn't believe Kenjaku when Kenjaku said, we need to seal Gojo away inside a prison realm. But when they went to go get all these items and shit from Jujutsu Tech, um, Gojo was, left outside of the barrier. He couldn't get inside. They put up a barrier so Gojo couldn't get inside to protect his students. So Yuji and Todo was fighting against Hanami, Curse Spirit, special grade of like the Earth, and other things, and they were fighting against them. They were doing all right, but then Gojo was able to break through the barrier after some time, and he was like, he saw what was going on. He was like, okay, Yuji is training with Aoi, basically. He ain't training, but he's fighting with that wood thing over there, that thing called Hanami. And he was like, okay, hollow purpled that nigga, and he was like, oh, Hanami was almost dead after that. Gojo then was like, okay, you know, we'll play baseball, and they played baseball, and it was cool. He saw that, um, Megumi was kind of being a team player, not like going after shit himself. He gave him some advice. He was like, if you want to be strong and other things, like truly strong, you should like care about yourself more. Be a little more selfish. And then certain things happen after that. Megumi remembered some things, and he was able to take down a special grade curse by himself, um, which was one of the finger bearers at the end of season 1. And then they were all recommended for first grade status as first grade Jujutsu Sorcerer. Um, that was Yuji and Megumi for sure who were recommended. And then the Shibuya incident happened. See, Shibuya is, one of the things that most of these JJK fans cry about. See, I'm not a Gojo stan. When it comes to Gojo Sukuna, I like Sukuna. But I'm telling you the story of Gojo, so I have to tell you that. So then they see they planned shit out, right? So they had all these people down in Shibuya Station, right? And they were being attacked by the special grade curses and also Choso, one of the Death Room curse paintings. And Gojo was like, have to like save these people from these curses. He killed Hanami, ripped his eyes out, which were like horns, or not horns, but like stems and shit. Ripped it out of his head. And he like fucking, just basically vaporized him into nothingness. Um, and then Jogo ran away, and he was like, I need help. Mahito showed up, and they started killing off people. Him, Choso, and Jogo, they were all killing people. He was like, this bitch called Jogo or Gojo won't do anything. He doesn't want to kill these people with his domain expansion, so he won't even let it out. That's what he thought. And then Gojo was like, all right, domain expansion, unlimited void. But Gojo was a little bit hesitant for a little bit because he didn't want to fuck with the, like, innocent people that were there. But he knew that if he did that, he would save more people in the long run. So he was like, he killed all the like oddly transfigured humans. But in doing that, Kenjaku was already like he knew some things. So he showed up behind Gojo, and Gojo was like, "Oh shit, you look like my friend Gato, but you ain't him." He's like, "Of course I'm not. I'm somebody else. I'm Kenjaku, and I come to seal you inside a prison realm." And it went according to plan, and Gojo got boxed in. And then he got boxed in. He was like, time will not, move for me in here, so I'll just be figuring out how to get out of here or somebody gets me out. And he was boxed inside a prison realm, and that's where his story doesn't end, but it's cut short because season 3 hasn't come out yet. Well, really, season 4, won't be out until like probably 2028 or 2029. So I'll remake this video in the future. So don't worry about it. But Gojo, you know, Only time will tell for you anime only people. But you've probably been spoiled already. But I still like to like play games with y'all. Act like you haven't been spoiled yet. And he's, is he gonna get out of the box or is he not gonna get out of the box? Is he just gonna stay there forever? When if he does get out of the box, is he gonna like, start boxing right away or is he gonna do other things? Only some people know. Not only some people, but people know. But like I said, I'm an anime guy, so right now, so I ain't gonna say all of that. What happened? God damn it! It's hard for me to keep it in too. Like people think it ain't, um, but it is for me because I did read the manga and stuff. Um, but that's the story of Gojo as told by Green Angel, and not almost, and it is actually almost in its entirety for Gojo. But yes, stay tuned and stay cool around the corner.